What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. Hope y'all had a great week. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Today, we are talking all things WNBA. The regular season just ended, so what better time to reminisce about the season that was than right before the playoffs start? Let's get into it. Okay, I'm a pretty positive person in general, so let's start with something that I loved first. The Aces-Liberty rivalry. In my season preview, I talked about how these two super teams could help speed up the upwards trajectory the league's popularity has been on, because there's nothing that sports fans love more than a great rivalry, and buddy, have they made me look smart. As expected, these are the top two seeds heading into the playoffs, but they got here in kind of different ways. So what do you need to know? Quick bias alert, I am an Aces fan. Heading into the season, my thinking was that the Aces would get off to a quicker start since the Liberty were incorporating more new pieces. The Aces had the bulk of their 2022 championship team back, added the legendary Candace Parker, and some pretty important role players like Kia Stokes and Alicia Clark. The Liberty, on the other hand, brought in heavy hitters like Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, and Courtney Vandersloot to add to a core that was already pretty solid with Sabrina Ionescu, Maureen Johannes, and Benaj Alaney. Those are some huge pieces, including two former MVPs, so figuring out how to get everyone on the same page wasn't going to be guaranteed or easy. And they lost their first game of the season, which was funny to me as a hater, but they did make it to the All-Star break with a very good 14-4 record. But even with that record, they didn't always look sharp. It felt like a lot of their wins came in spite of themselves. Breanna Stewart would just decide that, hey, I'm going to figure out a way to win, and they'd pull it out. Then you had the Aces, who were just running through the league. A ridiculous 18-2 at the All-Star break. Getting Candace incorporated into the mix came with some hiccups, but they just had so many great pieces playing together who were familiar with each other that it didn't really matter. This continued post All-Star break as well until they played the New York Liberty. The Aces beat the Liberty by 17 in their first matchup of the season on June 29th, and it really illustrated how far apart these two teams were at the time. The Liberty, even with their struggles, still looked like the second best team in the league, but it felt like the Aces were well on their way to another title, which made what happened on August 6th that much more shocking. The Liberty completely dominated 99-61. A'ja Wilson had her worst game of the season after taking a shot to the face late in the first quarter, and nobody else really stepped up to help out either. To her credit, A'ja didn't make any excuses, and honestly, why should she? The fact that people made such a big deal about her having a bad game shows how incredible she is, but nobody is going to be great every single game. And along those same lines, this could have been a one-off performance for the Aces. They had lost before, it's a long season, it's professional basketball, it happens. The problem was that as the second half of the season developed, they started to look more and more like the Liberty had in the first half, which coincided with the Liberty looking every bit as dominant as the Aces had looked in the first half of the season. So what happened? How did they switch places? Well, for the Aces, even though adding Candace Parker didn't go quite as smoothly as they had hoped, things changed for them when she went down with an injury right before the All-Star break. She broke her foot and had to get surgery, and based on my non-medical expertise, I wouldn't expect her to be back this season, and even if she is, I wouldn't expect her to be contributing a ton. The Aces sacrificed a lot of depth to put this team together, and for the most part, it's worked out great. They have 4 starters who would be the number 1 option on just about any other team in the league. And of the role players they do have, Alicia Clark has quickly become one of my favorite players to watch, and Kia Stokes is a very solid defensive post player. Unfortunately, Stokes has been asked to step in for Parker, and she just doesn't have the offensive skill set that Candace does. I mean, how many players do? But it's limited what the Aces can do on that end of the court and made them easier to guard. The Liberty, on the other hand, have started to figure out everyone's role. Most importantly, Jonquel Jones has been playing like the former MVP that she is, elbows and all. I'm not entirely sure what happened the first half of the season, but you can tell she's much more locked in, which has made things easier for Breanna Stewart. To me, a former undersized shooting guard, the matchup that intrigues me the most is the one between Sabrina Ionescu and Kelsey Plum. Ionescu is one of the most polarizing players in the league. A signature shoe from Nike, the cover of the latest version of NBA 2K. You cannot escape her if you follow the WNBA. She is the league's marketing darling, which is one of the reasons she's also disliked. She's received accolades and promotion far exceeding more accomplished players, namely A'ja Wilson, despite being the human embodiment of monotone. Why? Well, she's adamantly heterosexual, feminine, she was friendly with Kobe and Phil Knight at Nike, and most importantly, she's white. All the things that the league and most corporations seem to think are marketable. Now, the worst part of all this to me is that she's had this privilege pointed out to her, but basically just shrugs. Like, yeah, the system is unjust and unfair, but it's not her fault, so she's just going to take advantage of it. So she's really made it easy for opposing fans and even players to hate her. Liberty fans obviously love her, and she's really leaned into the villain thing a bit more than I thought she would. Kelsey Plum is also heterosexual, although she doesn't feel the need to correct anybody who speculates that she isn't, like Sabrina has in the past. She's feminine, she's also white, but she is outspoken about her privilege, so credit to her for that. On the court, they're both offensively gifted. Plum is better at creating her own offense. That's why she's the leading scorer in NCAA history. And Ionescu, while she needs others to get her offense going, she's also better at creating for others. Now, I thought Sabrina would struggle the most adjusting to all these new pieces, but she's proven me wrong. It feels like she hasn't missed a three since winning the three-point shooting contest in record-breaking fashion at All-Star Weekend. Unfortunately, they're both pretty bad defensively. To me, it looks like Kelsey takes bad angles and she gets her lack of size taken advantage of regularly. Other teams try to screen her to death and she often makes poor decisions when that happens. Sabrina, even in her signature shoes, can't move her feet. There are other issues, and Plum struggles with this a little bit as well, but it's glaring with Sabrina. She'll get caught flat-footed all the time. When you're a bad defender, it's exhausting to the point where it can affect your offense. You're physically tired because the other team is trying to force you to guard the ball more so they can score, and you're mentally tired and frustrated because getting singled out and lit up on defense can be demoralizing. There's nothing either player can do to improve in any significant way on defense either. Kelsey is not going to grow. Sabrina is not going to get quicker. It is what it is. So it turns into a matter of who can ignore all that and still do what they do on offense. Both in general and in their matchups against each other, it looks like Sabrina has been much better at dealing with this than Kelsey. And if she can't figure something out, and if the Aces can't figure out how to make up for the loss of Candace Parker, it could be a long, cold winter for me and my fellow Aces fans. Now, I've liked the super team matchup this season, but let's talk about something I haven't liked this season. Referees. And look, nobody likes referees in any sport. NBA refs are awful. Major league umpires are garbage. We get it. But these referees in the WNBA are killing me. The main thing you want out of referees is consistency. Even if they're awful, at least be awful in a way I can predict so I can adjust my play accordingly. The refs in the WNBA don't believe in that at all. You don't know what you're getting game to game, quarter to quarter, or even play to play. It's frustrating to the players because it takes them out of the game and ruins the flow, and it's frustrating to watch. It ruins the fan experience because you're more focused on the refs than the players. And I certainly wouldn't want to be a ref because I'm a smart and decent human, but I'm willing to acknowledge how hard of a job it is. It's mostly judgment calls, and if you're a great ref, you're still going to be anonymous at best and hated at worst. But they don't have to make it so easy to hate them. But something has to be done. This is an entertainment product, and you can't have the main discourse around the games being the refs because nobody turns on a game to see referees make calls except for Mike Breen. Yes, I'm aware I made that joke last week, but I don't care. See, that's the kind of consistency we need out of our refs. Let's stick with things I dislike here for a second. Nobody turns on a game to see refs, but there are a number of reasons why people do turn on a game. The most basic one being to see a game. Shout out to the league's blackout rules for making this nearly impossible. It's a weekly routine at this point for me to look at the schedule, see the Atlanta Dreamer playing on TV, turn the game on, and boom, get hit right between the eyes with the blackout restrictions notice. I understand why games are blacked out, I really do. They want you to go see the game in person and buy concessions and all that, or buy a subscription to a streaming partner that pays the league to broadcast the game. I got it. But in my opinion, it makes no sense for a league that's in this growth stage to stop people from watching its games. First of all, I'm 5 hours away from Dream Games. We're all sad about it, but that doesn't change anything at this point. I can't just hop in my car and go to the arena. And I'm not paying for a subscription to watch Bally Sports because nobody is. That's why they've declared bankruptcy. So let me just have a place to watch all the games. I'd be willing to pay a higher price, not too high, so don't get crazy, for League Pass if you could guarantee I'd be able to watch the games. Let's be real, it's 2023. People are more likely to go to a game if they've seen it on TV first. It's also infinitely more accessible. Everyone can't just afford to hop in the car, buy tickets and all that. Again, I'm 5 hours away. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert would have to buy me a flight, commercial no doubt, for this to be reasonable for me. It's easier to grow the game if you make it more accessible via TV and streaming. More people watch, more people become fans, more people watching leads to more people wanting to go in person, and more people watching leads to better ratings, which leads to bigger TV deals. So please, stop with the blackouts. Speaking of TV, something I did like from this season is the league's deal with Ion Television. To me, a completely unbiased person, it proves with 100% certainty my argument from mere moments ago. Every Friday night, I know I'm getting at least one WNBA game to watch. It's easy, it's on a channel that most people have, I can always count on it, I love it. It's certainly not perfect. I'd like better camera quality, better on-screen graphics, and an actual halftime show, but none of that matters because they do what they say they're going to do, which is show me WNBA basketball every single Friday. I imagine as the deal moves forward, Ion will get more comfortable broadcasting live sports and improve a lot of these issues, but credit where credit is due because I'm just happy that we have another option outside of ESPN and the regional sports networks to watch some WNBA basketball. Was that too positive? Well, how about this? My next dislike is talk about expanding the league. Look, this shocked the hell out of me too. I badly want the Comets and the Charlotte Sting back, and it would be cool to see a team in Denver and Toronto. Also, those would be extra roster spots that would be giving playing opportunities to a ton of talented players who aren't currently on a team because space is so limited. But honestly, I don't think the league is ready yet. This started becoming apparent at the All-Star break. Players started speaking out publicly about how the league wasn't providing tickets to any of the festivities for players who weren't participating in the formal events. This is cheap as hell. If the players want to go, welcome them. It adds value to the fan experience, so more people might want to go see it in person themselves because their chances of running into a player they see on TV, when the games aren't blacked out, of course, has gone up. And players being there also add to the importance of the event. If they care enough to be there, then it must be important. If you as a league can't even do that, then forget about bringing in entire ass organizations and cities. On top of that, can we talk about how they travel again? That's been one of the big talking points for a while now. Players fly commercial flights from city to city, sitting next to people like me and whoever it was that had diarrhea all over that one plane that had to turn around. Players flying commercial is ridiculous for a number of reasons. Most of them are already used to flying charter from college. They can't control when they get into the next city, which affects rest and quality of play. There are safety concerns, as we saw when someone was harassing Brittany Griner in an airport. The list goes on and on. The league has acknowledged the importance of charter flights, and before the season, they announced that teams could now charter a flight when they were playing back-to-back nights and in the playoffs. They even reiterated this during the All-Star break, although I don't know how many players heard since they couldn't get tickets. Well, it recently came out that the league walked this back a bit. You can still charter flights in the playoffs, but only under certain circumstances. Understandably, the players were pissed. So what's the reason for these charter flight restrictions? Money. Certain owners either can't or won't pay for it. So how can you even start adding more teams to the league when you have certain teams that can't even meet what should be the standard for the highest level of pro basketball in this country? Here's my solution. Clearly, you have a market for owners if you're publicly talking about expanding. People who recognize the value and ability to make money owning a team, so they're willing to spend money to buy one. So let them buy out the owners who don't want to pay for charter flights. When that happens and the league can afford to let players go to All-Star Weekend for free and charter flights all season long, then you can start talking about adding more teams. In the meantime, just expand rosters from 12 to 15 to allow some more talent into the league. Boom, you're welcome. Which brings me to the final like of the season that I'm going to talk about today, the talent of the league. The Aces in the Liberty are absolutely stacked and in a tier of their own at the moment, but there are plenty of other good teams and players to keep up with. The Connecticut Sun are right below those two teams and have MVP candidate Alyssa Thomas, who is a legit triple-double threat, and DeWanna Bonner, who is leading the team in scoring at age 35. They're the third best team in the league despite All-Star center Brianna Jones only playing 13 games before tearing her Achilles. Been there, done that. Then you have that next tier, which has the Dallas Wings and the Minnesota Lynx. Dallas can flat out score. Arike Ogunbowale, Natasha Howard, and Satu Sabally each average at least 16 points per game. Sabally is one of my favorite players to watch. She can do it all. And they have the most physically imposing presence in the league, Tierra McCowan. Howard is the only one of those four who is older than 27, so they're set up nicely for the future. The Minnesota Lynx are led by Nafisa Collier, who is back like she never missed a beat after missing most of last season after giving birth. She's averaging 21-8 and has been on the fringes of MVP conversations herself, and I really like what they did in this last draft. Because of the level of talent, the lack of summer league, the number of games that are played, the amount of minutes to go around, it is damn near impossible to find players who can come into the WNBA and contribute immediately. If you draft one who can, you're doing fantastic. Minnesota somehow got two. Now, we figured Diamond Miller was going to be good, number 2 pick in the draft, very talented player at Maryland, but she got hurt early in the season, and that's a huge setback, especially when you're talking about the factors I just named. But she's recovered really well and has had a really good season. Then you've got Dorka Juhas, tall, 6'5", second-round pick, didn't play a ton in the first quarter of the season or so, then boom, started getting in and making the most of her opportunities. And you figure with that kind of height, you're going to get some rebounding, but what's really shocked me is how well she can pass the ball. You saw it some her last year at UConn, but this is a real skill she has. She's had a number of games with 4+ assists. And again, these are rookies doing this on a playoff team. On the next tier, you've got the Dream, the Mystics, the Sparks, and the Sky. The Dream are the rare improved team that has also somehow disappointed. That's mostly due to how they finished the season. I mean, at one point, they were looking like a 24 or 25 win team, so it took a pretty sizable collapse for them not to even finish above 500. And there was a mix of factors that caused that to happen, from injuries to coaching to lack of execution, but it's important to remember that there has been growth. They have improved from last season. You can't have growth without growing pains, and that's all we've seen, but overall you have to be excited about them moving forward. Ryan Howard improved on what was an incredible rookie season. She's a franchise player. I've got my Gamecock bias, but Alicia Gray, my goodness, first All-Star season, career year, just a hell of a player. Cheyenne Parker upped her production as well. A couple of question marks like the rest of the teams in this tier, but they definitely moved forward, even if it wasn't as far forward as some of us had hoped. When you look at the pieces the Mystics have, you would think they'd be in the tier above this one. Brittany Sykes is the most athletic player in the league and one of the best defenders. Natasha Cloud and Ariel Atkins are straight up hoopers. Shakira Austin is on her way to being an all-star, and Elena Deladon is Elena Deladon. Their problem has just been health. Atkins, Austin, and Deladon have all missed significant time this year. With Deladon, you have to wonder how much she has left in the tank health-wise. She can still hoop, but how often is she going to be healthy enough to do so? That day was always going to come though, and the good news for them is that their core is still in its prime. Similar story for the Sparks, honestly. I mean, Lexi Brown and Lasia Clarendon have each missed a ton of time. Katie Lou Samuelson hasn't even played because she's been pregnant, and those are 3 key pieces. But other pieces have stepped up. Jordan Canada has had a career year, one of the most improved players in the league, finally looks like the 5th pick in the 2018 draft. And surprise, surprise, Nneka Ogwumike still looks like Nneka Ogwumike. Before the season, people were talking like the Sky were supposed to be trash. They lost Candace Parker and Courtney Vandersloot, but they showed a ton of heart. Kalia Copper took a huge leap forward, which isn't always easy to do when you get that much more asked of you. And it feels like every time I saw them play, Marina Mabrey was either hitting huge threes or trying to fight people. Even the bottom tier of the league has hope. They don't look all bad. Seattle can absolutely build around Jewel Lloyd. She can score, we've known she can score, and we also know how much more efficient she can look when she's not shouldering the bulk of that burden. They've got a nice piece in Jordan Horston, who split time between coming off the bench and starting, but has shown plenty of flashes in her rookie season, particularly as a rebounder, for the Storm to be excited about her potential. Speaking of that, the Indiana Fever had the best rookie this year in Aaliyah Boston. Not a huge surprise, but she's been just as good as advertised. 15 and 8 on 58% shooting. Great playmaking, even better defense. I'd actually like to see her be a little bit more aggressive, looking for her own offense next season. They also have Grace Berger. Whenever the Fever play, I'm one of the many voices screaming into the void asking why they don't play her more. Just a solid, steady, talented ball player. They have some things to figure out, as you would imagine a team in this tier would, but they also have some solid pieces in place, and they should get a pretty high draft pick. The only team that was really a true dumpster fire this season was the Phoenix Mercury. The focus was apparently celebrating the return of Brittany Griner, rightfully so, and making sure Diana Taurasi became the first player in league history to hit 10,000 points and celebrating that, again, rightfully so. Where are they headed in the future? I don't really know. They managed to botch the Skylar Diggins-Smith situation. You can squint and kind of see some pieces to build around, but I'd probably blow the whole thing up and start over. But hey, even that's reason to have hope. Overall, the league is in a fantastic spot, and the playoffs should do even more to prove that. And what's great for women's basketball fans is that it'll lead us right into the college basketball season. You never really have to miss women's basketball, and that's my real final thing that I like. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Appreciate you watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. Don't forget to check out the YouTube channel if you haven't already for some video-only stuff there like Brett's Bets, the Gamecocks Football Captain's Log, and Beyond the Bark. And I will catch you later.